Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Annie Davis, here for a Week 6 review. And with me today, as you can see, we've got a brand new guest on the podcast. He's making his debut on the show with me today. He's part of the Franchise Tag podcast. With me today is Jonny Bisby. Jonny, how are you?
Andy, thank you very much for having me on. Really looking forward to talking about an entertaining Week 6. Obviously, you enjoyed the London games, the Bears living up to those sort of lofty expectations from the preseason. So looking forward to talking all things NFL.
Yeah, we will get into that later on. But before we do that, you are a new guest. We ask all of our new guests the same question: why are you a fan of the team you support? So you're a Jets fan. So why are you a Jets fan?
Yeah, so I only got into American football probably 10 to 12 years ago. I literally had no idea about the sport, and I needed a cap on holiday. I stumbled across I was in Croatia, and I stumbled across a little sports shop, and there was a badge which I sort of recognised, but I had no idea. Obviously, the New York Jets, unfortunately, was the cap. So yeah, I've stuck with them ever since. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride being a Jets fan, but I wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think. It's been I think New York, one of the only, one of the few franchises where I think expectations and reality are just two completely different things. But yeah, it's great to be a Jets fan. I've seen them, a couple of times, obviously a couple of weeks ago with yourself in London. So that's pretty much. It's not a great story, but yeah, I've loved the Jets and followed them ever since. So that's my story.
Well, at least with same as me and the Dolphins, at least no one can call you a glory hunter. We're supporting the Jets.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Anything but.
Yeah, and of course, did spend time with you over the weekend. A couple of weeks ago, we did the same thing. A year ago as well, Jags Falcons at Wembley. And you are a Jets fan. You got to ask the Jets. Well, at the time, he was the Jets head coach. A question, Rob Saleh, in the post-game presser. Now, for you, I've not done it yet with the Dolphins. Done press work at my own team, but that must be for you just an amazing experience. Not only to be in the presence, and you were front row as well, to be in the presence of Aaron Rodgers and Rob Saleh. How did that feel? Not only being in the presence of them, but also getting to ask your team head coach a question in person.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a brilliant experience, and very nerve-wracking. Particularly, obviously, it was Robert Saleh's final game. He was sacked by the Jets just I think a day and a half after I'd asked that question. So he was clearly in a bad place after the Jets defeat. So that sort of raw emotion was definitely something that I felt in the air asking my question. But I mean, him and Aaron Rodgers, just these are people that you see every day. Every Sunday on TV doing their own thing. They're huge characters. I remember when it was Trevor Lawrence, seeing him last year. The aura that he had was something I'd never really seen before in terms of a sports person. And I think Rodgers had something very similar. So yeah, it was a great experience. I think it's great that we are in a position to be able to do that with obviously starting out as fans and working our way into those sort of media sort of circles, which a little bit of a pinch myself moment, but really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, Lawrence had aura, but Rodgers' aura was just tenfold, and I'd probably say more so when he came in pre-game. I think post-game was a bit of a sort. I wouldn't say a negative feel around the place. It was sort of like felt a bit like a morgue, but he came in and he was actually in really good spirit.
Wasn't he? Yeah, he was. Yeah. He was. Yeah, really, really sort of chatty and I don't know, trying to crack a joke. Something. It's probably wasn't something I was expecting from Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, I think obviously coming to London, I think is such a spectacle for these players. I think that they know they've got to put on a bit of a show because the eyes, I suppose, of not just the US, but the whole world are are on them perhaps a little bit more when they come afield, because it's such a rarity. Yeah, no, it was a really good character,
Yeah, he was, and it's just like the guy you've watched for so many years, on TV, whether it's Hail Mary against the Lions and all those years ago, or just winning 4 MVPs, to be just around him, and I was very lucky to ask him a question in the pre-game on the Friday, and if I'm sure same for you, if we told ourselves 5 years ago, maybe even during COVID times, that watching these guys play, or even before COVID, that fast forward 3-4 years, you'd be in the same room as them, getting to speak to them. It's just something I never thought I'd really ever be able to do. And even when I started doing the journalism stuff in Brighton, I never thought it would come as quickly as this. And so I never thought I never dreamt that I'd ever be able to ask questions to like Aaron Rodgers, or just be around them. Lamar Jackson last year, and I think that all goes to you got to thank the guys, who run it all, and the guys at Hanover who organised the cred, always thankful for them to give both myself and you opportunities. And it's always a good atmosphere there. Everyone you meet,
Absolutely.
From all you boys, I think you boys are all really good at franchise tag, great lads, and from Kerry, Jacob Bryan to Dre and Ash and Cole Yark, and everyone I've met, everyone I've met in this NFL world has all been just really nice. And I feel like can't my stars lucky enough. Moving on, though, or moving back to the Thursday game that took place in the US as the Seahawks took on the Niners. I actually watched this game at the house of one of your colleagues at Franchise Tag, Sky. Got the luxury of spending time watching him with him and Gareth. And,
classic.
Classic. It was
a good time.
I mean, I say that I fell asleep, had to leave after half time because I was just so knackered from a day of work. But it was a good experience. We watched a bit of Premier League years before the game started. I'd already eaten, but they ordered wings. And overall, a very good evening and a very good game as well. 36-24 to the 49ers. I mean, the Niners, a lot of doubt were sort of thrown at them after what happened to them a week before against the Cardinals, a game we watched together at the Beehive. But I felt like this game was just the Niners coming back to the team I know you had the third quarter where there was a kick return for a touchdown, but I thought the Niners were just really dominant. I think they just showed exactly why they're the best team in the division, and some would say arguably the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, particularly that first half, as you mentioned, it's another brilliant game from Brock Purdy. His rise is absolutely sensational. We're now talking about he will become the most paid quarterback in NFL history in the next couple of years, which for someone taken last in the NFL draft is just an unbelievable story. But he's generally playing at a top 5 quarterback level again this season. The 49ers offense, despite injuries, obviously the most the biggest one of those is obviously Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason went down in this game, but they were able to churn out good running backs with ease. George Kittle having in two scores. I think the Niners offense, there's no issues for me. My only concern is on the defensive side of the ball. I think this is something that we've probably not. I don't know. It isn't really being highlighted enough that the Niners defense isn't playing quite at the level that I suppose we're accustomed to, particularly from the last couple of years. The Seahawks, they managed to surge a little bit in the second half, but I think with a better team, obviously going into this week with the game against the Chiefs, I worry, for the Niners a little bit on that side of the ball, but they were able to get the job done. Concerns are there, I think, for the Seahawks. Geno Smith, who started the season so well, and people rightly were applauding his exploits early in the season. Really struggled, even though I think he threw over 300 yards in this game. I think you're right. Obviously, the Niners, they have bounced back. They needed to bounce back. I think a few question marks, particularly even from myself, actually. about where they would or how they rank, in terms of the elite superpowers for this season alone. They're now back to 500, and I think they can really push on once they have everything clicking. We don't know obviously when Christian McCaffrey's coming back, but yeah, they've got so much talent around this roster. They just need to get everything in order. But with Brock Purdy at the wheel, I think everything's all okay for the Niners at the moment.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you look at the division they're in as well. The fact that they're 3-3, and I believe they're still top of the NFC West because the Rams have been a poor season. Looking at the stats now, the NFC West, they're still top of the NFC West, 3-3, with the Seahawks also 3-3, Cardinals 2-4, Rams 1-4. So I think for them, they've been a bit hit and miss so far this season, lost games they maybe shouldn't have, but they're still top of the division. You think about how, on the flip side that, you look at the NFC North, the fact that Packers at bottom of the division with 4 wins, and they're top of the division with 3. So I think they're lucky in that sense that they're not in a division such as the NFC North right now. And I think for them, we don't know when McCaffrey's back, exactly what you said. I fear it could be a season thing. They're trying to find any way to get him in. But I think even if he comes in, say, late November, late December, they could easily come in that time, and they're 7-7, 8-7, and this could still be winning the division. So I think for them, they're still right now doing what they need to do. And I think, for them, it's not, you don't win Super Bowls in weeks 5 and 6. You win them in the Super Bowl itself. I think as long as you get that run going together when it matters late on in the season down the stretch, I think that's for me the most important thing. And I think the Seahawks, obviously, they were 3-0, but I think they've become this team now who I think we all thought they were. I think the 3 wins they got were against a banged up Dolphins team. Took the Patriots team to overtime, and they're not exactly a great team. Only 1 win the entire season. So I think, for their point of view, I think we're now seeing, like the Saints, the real Seahawks. I think their team that still tied for the division, they can still win it, but I think they're very much so now back to the team we all thought. We'll move on now to the second lot of games. Obviously, the first lot was the game in London in week 6. That was between the Bears and the Jags. The Bears got a very convincing win. The score in that game was 35 points to 16. For me, I've said it in a TikTok I've just edited now. This was the game for anyone who's in London that we saw Caleb Williams arrive in the NFL. I thought this was the game. I think against the Panthers, you can maybe argue, the team they're playing isn't that good, and you can maybe make that case in this game against the Jags. They're 1-5 as well, but Caleb Williams looked really good. I mean, really good. I mean, 4 touchdowns for the first time in his career. Had less yards than Trevor Lawrence, but I think you think about that second quarter particularly. You think about the scrambling plays he made to stretch down the field in this one drive where I think it's like a 30 yard gain, got him around the halfway line, and then later on in the drive took him to 2 or 3 yards away from the end zone. So I think for me, Caleb Williams, obviously Cole Kmet had 2 touchdowns. He was, the star weapon for them, same as Keenan Allen, 2 touchdowns as well. But I thought Caleb Williams, all doubts we had, I had certainly in the first 3 weeks, have been completely evaporated, in my opinion. I think we've now seen who he really is and how good he can be. And I think, he'll have some probably tough moments throughout the year. All quarterbacks do. But I think for me, I was really impressed with the Bears and really impressed with Caleb Williams in particular. But for the Jags, it was another poor loss. I mean, they were okay the first quarter. They had a bit of a good ending. They scored the touchdown. I believe it was through Gabe Davis. But, overall, I thought they were really poor. And I think credit does go down to the Bears defense. It was a lot of, a really good performance from them. Looking at the stats on their defense, 4 sacks in total a game, 1 interception. Of course, only landed 16 points as well. I thought the Bears defense showed up as well. I mean, all these doubts they had over them, and they're 4-2. And I know that could be first or fourth in the NFC North, but I think Bears for me, I think they haven't been convincing in some games, but I thought this game for me was really impressive. But what was your thought, Jonny?
Yeah, I completely agree with your headline point of Caleb Williams. This was the game he, really put the league on notice. All the eyes were on London for the early game, I suppose, for everyone. So he's getting all the attention, and he just looked really mature. I think obviously his stats you mentioned, 4 touchdowns, good completion rates. thrown through. I think over 200. But I think his maturity. Look, he stood well in the pocket. He looked like a quarterback that had played at least 3 or 4 years in the NFL. He was able to get the ball to a variety of targets, which I think is so promising for a rookie quarterback, let alone the first overall pick. So it's obviously been it's not been an easy start for him, but he's really now turning into his own. And I think he wasn't forcing anything that I could see. Obviously, he had a pick, but I think being able to spread the ball around is what you want from your young quarterback. Gives the Bears a lot of excitement. They have, as you say, really good defense, probably a top 5 defense at the moment. That really hurt the Jags, who are in all sorts of trouble. But yeah, this is definitely the time for the Bears. If not this season, I think fans will be optimistic, but I expect to be quite realistic as well in terms of, okay, this is about developing the young quarterback. If we make the playoffs, fantastic. But we want to be in a great position probably next year to really make a go at becoming a contender. So yeah, this was the game where Caleb Williams arrived, and yeah, I fully expect him to continue his trajectory as one of the standout young quarterbacks in the NFL.
I don't know whether you can get as much a feel on the TV as you can in real person, but also you went to the game last week, Jets Vikings. You were there in person. Because I felt the atmosphere was better between Jets and Vikings, but everyone I'm seeing on socials is saying how good it was in the Bears fan base. I'm granted it was, a good atmosphere, but I still think that the Jets Vikings was better. But what was your take on what you heard the atmosphere-wise from watching it back at home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, the London games never seem to fail. I don't think I've been to a game, and then I've been to some dross ones over the last few years. There hasn't been, a game where the atmosphere hasn't been, ticking. Obviously, for particular fan bases, the Vikings were able to make so much noise a couple of weeks ago. But it's just great to see the carnival of British NFL fans, flocking together to the to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Whatever team they support, and obviously this was a Bears home game. I was, expecting a bit more of a competitive edge from the Jaguars because they're obviously used to this tradition and playing in the stadium. Trevor Lawrence has won there, but yeah, they just weren't able to get a stronghold, and I think in part that was due to the amount of Bears fans. They have such a huge fan base in this country as one of the overseas marketing franchises for the UK. So yeah, they were able to build a great atmosphere, but yeah, I think that comes from a variety of just NFL fans who just want to come and watch football. So yeah, that definitely came across on the TV, and yeah, I'm sure it did help on the field for the Bears.
Yeah, I think mix that in with the fact that they did arrive on Tuesday, whereas the Jags arrived on Friday. I think I need to find some stat where whichever teams arrive considerably earlier than the other, how many of them win. I would love to know.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I think I've seen exactly the same stats. It's arriving, in a country which is, Jacksonville. Obviously, that's probably 5 or 6 hours behind. So giving yourself just over 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever, to prepare in a different country just feels, just poor preparation. But I don't know. Obviously, the Jags are used to this. But yeah, that certainly must play a huge part of it.
Yeah, I reckon so. And also going back to your point about the fans, I think when you've got Jags fans who most likely from the UK, they're probably deciding I can only go to one game this year. I might go to one where the away team or with a home team. I'm going to pick the Wembley game, and also being their second home is Wembley more than Tottenham. And then on the flip side, the Bears haven't been in London since 2019. I think that was probably why you saw a lot of Bears fans turn up. And I did see actually a lot of friends of the podcast were there in attendance. Also, I mentioned it before. Sky and Gareth were there. Gareth actually is waiting. I think it's next few weeks. I think he'll be making his podcast debut on the show. But Sky was on a few weeks ago and was on last year. Also saw the likes of Sam Moores. He was there. Bumped into him randomly. Baldy and the big fella, who are friends of the show, who I've not had on this podcast yet, but they're coming on when the Raiders play the Jags in December. Elsewhere, spent time with Ben Isaacs, who came on the show before. He even spent time on the tube with Ben Isaacs, which was quite a cool experience. Many others who I've not mentioned. Apologies if I haven't mentioned your name. Many more friends of the podcast were all there, so that was a really good thing as well. Bumped into Phoebe Schechter, had a chat with her. Yeah, I think always good meeting people like that, and bring on the next week. Now moving on to our 6 p.m. games. Quick roundup of some of the scores. So the Ravens edge out the Commanders by 30 points to 23. And the Packers beat the Cardinals 34-13. And the Texans went 5-1 after beating the Patriots 41-21 before the Patriots do go on and go to London. The Buccaneers won a thriller in a 51-27 win against the Saints. And I want to thank Murph, friend of the show, for this stat line on the game. So in this game in total, the Buccaneers had 594 yards on Sunday, a franchise record, 172 rushing yards in the fourth quarter, which is a franchise record, and without Rachaad White. They're now tied for the most points scored in the NFL this season. Baker Mayfield leads the NFL in touchdown passes. They scored 51 points on Sunday, despite all the stuff that happened on midweek with the hurricane. And they're the first team with 300 or more passing yards and 275 or more rushing yards in a road game since 1962. Now, we weren't going to touch on the Buccaneers game really, but just overall, I mean, I think they've been, better than last year. Murph talked about it on the show, how we talked about Dave Canales, him leaving was like going to be a big effect on Baker Mayfield. Murph was saying, credit to him, he was saying, he thinks actually Canales wasn't as good as people made out. If you look at how he performed since he's left and how the Panthers have performed with him as head coach, it's maybe he was right all along. And I think the Buccaneers have been really impressive. And I think, for me, I can't think anyone but them or the Falcons to win that NFC South.
100%. I'd say 100%. And I think, it starts with Baker Mayfield. He was outstanding last year, coming into a situation when so many people had ridden it off. He's just such a tough quarterback, and he seems to be the sort of quarterback that I think teammates would absolutely love playing for. Obviously not necessarily being the most talented in terms of the quarterbacks in the league, but certainly someone who leaves everything on the field, just loves playing football. Obviously came back. I think it was in the third quarter. Looked like he was going to be taken off with an injury, and was able to ride through it. Just even such a good leader for the Buccaneers. And when we go back to when he joined, they were in obviously a big sort of transition period where we thought they were going to have to rebuild to get themselves do the cycle of going back to get a young quarterback, selling off their aging assets, which obviously Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, who I think is probably approaching 30. These big name players who I suppose just want to be chasing rings for the rest of their careers. But I think they've definitely got a chance now with the Bucs. It was a roller coaster game, very chaotic, and the Saints. I think you mentioned it earlier. We're sort of seeing now. I think. Defensively, the worst issue is being able to give up that many yards, both in the air or on the ground. We know how good the Buccaneers running backs, again, a bit of a churn. Obviously, Rachaad White's dropped down the pecking order for Bucky Irving, and I think Sean Tucker was the second year who had a really good game. But yeah, that's not something that we've come to expect from the Saints. We think they are very reliable on the defensive side of the ball. So whether that's an anomaly, but yeah, I think it is between the Falcons and the Buccaneers at the moment for that division. I'm undecided who I want to go for. To be honest, I went for the Buccaneers to beat the Falcons last week. Obviously, the Falcons snatched that one in overtime. I just really like Baker Mayfield. I think he's playing exceptional football at the moment, and I think deserves to be in the conversation at least. For MVP this year, he's been able to step out of the shell. He's got a decent contract, which many people I don't think were expecting him to get probably 18 months ago. I'm gonna ride with them for the division.
Well, interesting. I still. It's tough. I didn't think a year ago.
The Falcons do look good. The Falcons do look exceptional as well, and they looked really good, against the Panthers. So maybe that's me just jumping the gun a little bit, but two great teams, obviously, which is just not something we expect from the NFC South. So that's good to see.
Yeah, no, it's been a really poor division for many years, but I think this actually has been really good. Obviously, the Saints were crowned Super Bowl champions after week 2, but they haven't been great since. But overall, and also the Panthers are the Panthers, and therefore going to be top 5 pick once again. Speaking of the Falcons, they did beat the Panthers 38 points to 20. The Eagles narrowly beat the Browns by 20 points to 16. This is a game that I spent the game watching it with 2 Eagles fans, both Gareth and Steve McGuinness. 3 fans, including Alex Bartlett as well from Hanover Sport. 3 very disgruntled Eagles fans, let's put it that way. They weren't happy with Sirianni, and of course, we all know what happened after the game there. The Colts narrowly beat the Titans by 20 points to 17. The Chargers beat the Broncos by 23 points to 16. The Steelers got back to winning ways. They beat the Raiders by 32 points to 13. And then finally, we're going to go through, before we go into Sunday, our last 2 games we're focusing on. The Bengals did beat the Giants on Sunday Night Football, winning by 17 points to 7, including a brilliant run from Joe Burrow in that game as well. Lions-Cowboys, the penultimate game we're going to talk about today. They absolutely demolished the Cowboys by 47 points to 9. It was a clinic from start to finish. Looking at the particular stats, Goff had 215 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Dak Prescott, two picks, no touchdowns, only 178 yards. Dave Montgomery had 80 yards and 2 touchdowns from 12 carries. But the Cowboys' best running back was Rico Dowdle with 25 yards. And receiving wise, we saw Jameson Williams have a touchdown and 76 yards. CeeDee Lamb was probably the light in the dark tunnel. He had 89 yards. Good performance from him. But overall, the Cowboys were really, really poor. And the Lions now moved to 4-1. The Cowboys moved to 3-3. NFC East is probably still in reach for the Cowboys, but the Lions are very much still in the hunt for that NFC North. But of course, the big talking point in this game was not even the game itself. It was the injury to Aidan Hutchinson in a horrible situation for the Lions. Of course, their best player on defense by some way. It's a horrible injury. I don't know whether you saw it, Jonny, but that you can hear the breaking of the leg. I believe it was it the ankle. I'm going to quickly get up any news on particular how long he's out for, but it was.
I think it's 4 to 6 months. They said. I mean, Dan Campbell's still optimistic that he could potentially play again before the season comes, but never rule anything out. But it was obviously a horrific injury, as you mentioned. Not something you want to see, especially for one of the young sparks in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that for them, we don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know how it might happen, and I think Dan Campbell has more than enough of coaching ability to help the team cope with that. But if he is out for the entire season, which it could happen, that could be a huge loss for them. The NFC is wide open, but I think to lose one of the best players in the league in defense, let alone your team, massive blow. And I do worry for them with, in these big games when they come up against the Niners or even the Packers. I think that it could be a bigger loss than we think. But you never know. They got enough of a culture there, and they got a brilliant offense with a great offensive line. It may not matter as much, but
it's difficult, as you say. I think but he is such an X factor for that defense. He's able to change a game. He's that's type of player. So losing whatever position it is obviously going to massively dampen your chances of going really far in this competition. But yeah, well, the Lions' defense has obviously massively improved over the last 2 years. Looking at the defensive line, I think a lot of it has to do with issues in the interior. Obviously, we saw McNeil, I think, break out last year. I think injuries, but he's been paired with DJ Reader, and it's on Wazarike, I think, the other standout defensive lineman. They're already taking a lot of the work in terms of being able to get pressure on the quarterback, and so in terms of where does the replacement for Hutchinson come from? They're the interior of the line are going to have to take on a lot of that sort of burden in terms of getting those big statistics and big pressures. But yeah, I think with what has been rumored today, I've seen some of the names. I mean, Lions fans love Max Crosby. He's obviously I think a local guy. I'm not sure if he is was a Lions fan growing up, but he seems to be a guy who I could never imagine leaving the Las Vegas Raiders, but could it possibly to Detroit? I mean, that would take an almighty amount of draft picks. So I don't know. For me, there seems to be one obvious choice, and that's in terms of someone who's available and someone who will probably be quite or relatively cheap, and that's probably Hassan Reddick. I hate to say it, at the Jets, he's never played for them and managed to rack up so many fines. But yeah, it seems like he will be leaving New York with them, having had played a game, and I think that fills a glaring need for Detroit. So that's my prediction. We'll come back to it in a couple of weeks, but we'll see.
He certainly will. And you mentioned him there. He was born in Lapeer, Michigan, went to high school in Texas, but went to college in Eastern Michigan as well. So I think we're going to go on to some breaking news in a bit about the Raiders and news with them. And they're obviously looking to probably have a fire sale now, potentially. I think with that news coming out, I think Crosby may well think, you know what, I am 27 now. I can't play forever. And I think whilst he is absolutely made to play for Las Vegas Raiders, he really is. He's born to be a Raider. But I think at the same time, he's going to want a ring. And I think the Lions, if they can get him, oh boy, that's going to be, next man up sort of no difference really lost there. But I think even going further than that, you think about when Hutchinson does come back and they've got Crosby and Hutchinson in their defense, Super Bowl favourites straight away. That would be just having them two. Oh my God, that would be just. I had Crosby as my defensive player of the year this year, prediction wise, and Hutchinson is one of the best players as well on defense in the league. Have them playing for the same team, it would be just unbelievable. So for me, that would be quite the addition. Speaking of which, before we go on to a Monday Night Football game between the Bills and the Jets, after that game happened, the Jets have gone out and got Davante Adams. What seemingly it's not been confirmed yet. Rappaport has put it on his Twitter. Don't believe any announcement yet on the Jets socials, but for that kind of field team, obviously, they did lose last night to the Bills 23-20. But how are you feeling? Are you feeling like that's a good addition, or are you thinking, well, it's too late now, we'll put all 2 and 4? How are you feeling about the Davante Adams addition in New York?
Yeah, I'm great. I think over the weekend, I thought a little bit about it, and I was like, I'm not sure whether whether we need him. But having stayed up and watched the Jets Bills game last night, obviously great games from Garrett Wilson and Lazard, but that's it really for the Jets. Mike Williams made some couldn't catch a cold unfortunately yesterday, and Rodgers seems to think he was at fault for the final interception. Xavier Gibson obviously wasn't playing, so we're heavily reliant on Wilson and Lazard, who were being highly pressured. They're obviously the two main targets. So, Wilson's having to deal with so many defenders around him, and I think the signing of Davante Adams will either open him up or open someone else on the receiving core. We know obviously the rapport that Adams and Aaron Rodgers have, so it's definitely a good addition for the Jets. I just feel that there are a few glaring problems still that need to be addressed, and offensive line for me is the one that looks the most shaky. Went out this summer and spent some money, and obviously drafted a high end tackle in the draft. But yeah, Tyron Smith yesterday was in all sorts of bother, and I think gave up a couple of sacks, and it's not been a great start to the season for him. Obviously, again, a bit of an X factor offensive lineman certainly in the last decade, but it's not worked for him so far. And I think the run game was really good yesterday. I actually think this was probably the Jets' best game. Obviously, they played really well against the Patriots. The first half, particularly, that first drive, they looked really, really good. Obviously, only ended in field goal, but they were able to run the ball. Rodgers was mixing it up. They had some good plays, and yeah, the Jets should have won yesterday. And I think if they had someone like Davante Adams, then who knows, that would have given them obviously a much better chance. Obviously 2-4. It's not over. If you look at our schedule, I think after this week's game against the Steelers, I think this game. Okay, the game against the Steelers on the weekend on Sunday Night Football is a must win. If we lose that, I think it could be curtains. But yeah, I don't think we've got a particularly difficult schedule. But you always want, it's obviously hard to win a game in the NFL. We lost against the Broncos where we really shouldn't have. We probably should have lost to the Titans as well. So you're going to account for a couple more defeats. I think 2-5. That's game over surely. So yeah, must win week for the Jets.
Yeah, I think especially if the Bills win and go 5-2, next week, then I think that'll be a long way to come back from. I think same with us, if we lose to the Colts and the Bills win their next game, I think that could be curtains, even with a bye week in our favour. I mean, you mentioned before the O-line. Yeah, I think that was a big part of the game. I think Aaron Rodgers was constantly having to scramble around and, trying to make these miracle plays. And of course, he got that, the Hail Mary throw to Alan Lazard. Tyron Smith, I thought, had a really poor game. There was that one holding call I thought was a bit of a soft decision. I don't think there was one of the ones I think he was around about the 9:20 mark in the third quarter. There was a call that I thought personally the guy wouldn't have got to even if he wasn't held. But I think that there was a lot. I think he struggled all around in the game, and there were many times the game where Rodgers was just completely just isolated, and I think there was 3 sacks in total. So the Bills' defense got to Rodgers quite a lot in this game, and and I think it's probably why the Hail Mary happened. I think Hampton scrambled around. It's just, I think if the O-line was better, they may have not even been in that position to even go for Hail Mary in the first place. But what a throw that was from Rodgers. It was just funny that they showed his montage of his 3 previous Hail Marys, and then straight away he actually catches it. An amazing play, and also sadly all in vain for the Jets. But that was just one hell of a play. I mean, I was thinking before the game, there was actually a meme on it as well. I was thinking, I've not seen a Hail Mary in a long time in the NFL, like in person, not in person, but watching it live rather than highlights. That for me was just unbelievable.
Yeah, kept the Jets in the game. It was a brilliant play, called by Lazard, who's having a really good year. And that's what makes me optimistic about Davante Adams. I think people are probably a little bit cautious maybe because it's to the Jets going after ex-Packers. It's all in vain, blah blah blah. But Lazard is really looking good playing with Rodgers. So hopefully Davante Adams can do the same. But yeah, I mean that's what Rodgers can do. I think we've seen bits of it this season. He's admittedly said he's not been at his best and far from it. But yeah, I think that's the sort of thing that the Jets haven't had for a while. I mean, this time last year we had the Fail Mary where Tim Boyle threw that Hail Mary pick six. Yeah, how times have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I always love that game. I always love looking back on it. That Javon Holland Hail Mary pick six was just insane. I wish I was there at that watch party in Manchester. I really do. Finally, though, a bit of a sour note for the Jets as well. I mean, he lost the game by 3, and there were 2 missed field goals from Greg Zuerlein. 2, for me personally, very, very kickable. The way the NFL is these days, how kickers are. 2 very, very kickable field goals that he missed. Of course, lost by 3 points. That would have been 6 points. Probably would have won you the game. Obviously, we don't know what happened since then. Things like that could happen differently if there's more points scored, etc., etc. But yeah, that could have been a whole lot different if he had scored those field goals.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the broadcasters on the night were going about how windy it was, but Zuerlein to when was I think in the third quarter to it might have been to give the Jets a lead. It was literally a chip shot from maybe 30 yards. Obviously hit the post, and to have that happen twice is pretty crazy. So yeah, he'll Zuerlein's experienced. He's a decent kicker. It seems to be becoming harder to find good kickers at the moment in the NFL. But yeah, I think it's one of those. I think the opening drive should have ended up in a touchdown. There were a couple of plays where we were we were pushed back because of penalties. That's another thing that the Jets obviously Rodgers mentioned it. You've mentioned some of the poor officiating from last night, but if we can't convert from was it the 2-yard line, I think it might have been, then that's you're never gonna go far in the NFL. So yeah, don't want to make excuses, but yeah, the Jets are still there. They're hanging on. They're hanging on, mate. I'm gonna keep that optimism going. Yeah, maybe a trip to New Orleans, but no.
Well, that would be something. I must admit, I think I'll be shocked. Same thing for us. I'm not saying as a rival of your team, but I think there's more chance. I think there's 0 chance either of us make the Super Bowl, but you never know. No one thought the Giants would in 2007, so you just never know. That's the beauty of the NFL. Before we do end the podcast, though, a bit of AFC's breaking news for you. In the last half an hour, the Bills have gone out and acquired Amari Cooper from the Browns, which is
wow.
Like, can you please stop getting teams from our division these players? Why can't I go to the NFC? Why do they have to go? In the last 6 hours, I've had Davante Adams and Amari Cooper move to my division and not for my team. Looking at the particular draft,
that is a huge move. Can I just say that is like it was clear as day yesterday that Allen was missing Stephon Diggs because obviously Ray Davis had an incredible game. There was a great pass from Allen, but he was lucky, with some of the plays, and I think partly that was because the receiving core is either inexperienced or he doesn't have someone. They needed to get Shakir back. Curtis Samuel, I think, was the leading receiver, but I think that only came from one big play. So to go and get Amari Cooper, who is, I think is the wrong side of 30, but he's obviously still, he's not had great quarterback play for a while. But I am that pushes the Bills right up. I think as just that move, in my opinion. If they went out and got Davante Adams, I think that would have been game over for the rest of the division. But yeah, fair play.
I mean, it's looking at stats now. The news even now, it's the Bills pick up Cooper and a 6th rounder, and the Browns get a future 3rd rounder and a 7th rounder. I'm surprised there's not a second involved, but maybe because of the age, maybe that's been a factor in the trade. But yeah, big news for them. I think the Browns, I think they're, even more of in a disarray now. I mean, struggling even when he was there. I mean, Watson, had a terrible year. And I don't think Cooper's been getting numbers because of that reason. I think put him in the Bills team now, which has, I think personally, top 3 quarterback in the league. I think Josh Allen is, I think he's, physique-wise, he's the perfect quarterback. He is the perfect quarterback size-wise. And I think, I think he's a brilliant quarterback. And I hate to say this, he is. So I think you give Cooper someone like him, I think if you got him in fantasy football, I think certainly keep him now because he is going to certainly get his stats up. Obviously, you've got other players around who could split the load, but I think for me, the Bills with Cooper there are just going to be, now actually a contender that they were when they had Diggs. But that is where we end the podcast for today. So once again, huge thank you for Jonny for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's an absolute pleasure. I love talking on the show. Yeah, hopefully get back on soon. If you invite me back on, that'd be great. But yeah. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
No worries at all. And for those on YouTube, they can see your handle. But for those who are listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where can they find you on socials?
You can follow me at Jonny C Bisby, JONNY CBISBY. Yeah, that's I think all my handles on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. So yeah, go and check us out. And I'll be hopefully giving my views on the podcasts very soon.
You certainly will. And of course, do keep an eye out for Jonny as well on the Franchise Tag podcast. I do follow them as well as Jonny on socials. But in the meantime, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast. Our week 6 review was, as ever, myself, your host, Andy Davis. I was our guest today, Jonny Bisby. And we'll see you guys for our week 7